Alrighty, so as you've probably seen by the thumbnail and why you clicked on this video, is that today we're going to be making a plank base or a ship deck base, or however you want to think about it, a wood planking base. And it's going to be very simple. We're going to use some simple basswood strips, a couple paints, a knife, some clippers, and some glue. And that's it. The whole base will be done. So we'll get right into it. The first thing is we're going to be cutting up our bass strips here, bass wood strips, and this is exactly what I'm using today. This is a Hobby Lobby product. They are the only hobby store in my town, so that's where I go. And this is the product code right there, 812107. If you want to get the exact same thing, as you see, you get what is that? You get 5 pieces in here, so 10 feet. 10 feet for $2.49, and that's not if they're on sale. So you can do this in a couple different ways. You can either chop this up first to your rough lengths and then glue it on. But what I like to do is just glue it on and then chop it off. I find that wastes the least amount of material. So I'm going to start in the middle here, and I'm just going to run my glue along it like that, and then I'm just going to come in and stick this down, going whatever direction I want. You can do, it's a circle, so pretty much your orientation is going to always be the same, but you can choose to do it however you wish. And then I come in with my clippers, and I just clip it off just like that. And then we'll do the same thing again. Add a little bit more glue here. I can actually add it a couple. This super glue isn't going to dry too quickly, so I'll just come in, and I want to leave a little bit of a gap in between the planks. The planks will, there'll always be somewhat of a gap, but I like to exaggerate it just a little bit, just to show that these are planks. It's not just a sheet of wood. You can also come in with a knife, for example, and just kind of score down the line sideways with the knife, and that'll just accentuate the lines a little bit more if you end up placing them a little too tightly. So then I'm just going to repeat this process, and if you notice here, I'm only going to go halfway on this one. Get it stuck down right there, and then clip it off. I have to do some fiddling after I do it. But then I'm going to come back over here and stick this down. And that way you'll have some varying boards. You can vary them. You can vary the length every board if you want, so you could have an alternating pattern. I kind of like to do it sort of haphazardly, not in any particular order. I'm not 100% sure what this base specifically is going to be. It may only be a YouTube product. So if I'm going for something specific, like something I have done this for before, were the Corsairs of Umbar for the Middle-earth strategy battle game. And when I did that, I looked at a bunch of reference photos from both the movies and the art. There's not a lot of official art for Lord of the Rings, the books, but I looked at what I could and what I thought seemed credible, and ultimately decided on a plank pattern that I liked. And so for that, I was very uniform with all my bases. It was the same plank pattern every time. If the guys are all going to be on the same boat, then it makes sense that they're all going to have the same plank pattern. But for other things, like, say you're doing zombie pirates or something, then you may have just, haphazard planks, or you might have a broken plank here or there or whatever. And so right here, you can see what I did is I cut this one diagonally, and then I just tried to match that cut when I did the offcut. So then I just come back in and stick it right together like that. And so normally I wouldn't have this join pattern and this join pattern on the same base. That's just personal preference. I think that whatever situation they were in, they probably had the same joining pattern. across the whole situation here. But for demonstration purposes, you can see that you can do some more interesting things if you want to. So that'll finish up this side, and then I'll come back and do a couple more over here. I'm also trying to do this in real time. I'm not putting any cuts in here, just so you can see exactly how long it's going to take you. One of my biggest pet peeves for some tutorials is that they'll cut away and they won't say how long there was between it. And it's like, okay, that's fine, but if I want to make 100 of these for an army, I really want to know how long each one is going to take me. So hopefully you'll get a good idea. Obviously I'm going a little slower for explaining and being on camera and stuff, but for the most part, this is going to be how long it would actually take you. So this last one right here, and chop it off. And so that this is a 40 millimeter base from Games Workshop, and this was a 2-foot stick, and wrong way. There's 9 inches left, so this used 15 inches of that. And of course I'm going to cut some off. You could be much more precise than I was. As you see, there's a little bit of hangover there. You could be more precise and probably get it down, but that's not bad personally. If you were making, say, for example, this was Ogres for Age of Sigmar, 15 inches per base, and you get 10 feet. So what is that? Math on camera, never a good idea. 10 feet is 120 inches. So you're getting 9 bases for, again, 250. So say you got a 40 miniature army. That's less than $10 for materials. So it's not too bad. And like I said, that's if it's not on sale. So it's going to feel like it uses up a lot, and you're not just going to want to buy one pack if you're doing this for an army, but it goes pretty far, all things considered. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip the base over, and I'm going to start on the end that I didn't most recently glue, because that will be I think I most recently glued that side, because I don't want to break these off as I cut them. But I'm just going to come in and follow the curve of the base around and just trim them off. And you can do this with a knife. You can also cut them to length the first time with a knife, but I just find that this is much faster. I recently did some of these on square bases for my Ogres for the Old World, and it was even easier for that because you just lay the base down and slice them all off in one go. But with a circle, I find that just going around like this with clippers is the best way. All right, so there's your finished product there. And then what I like to do is just take a sanding stick and just come to the spots where the curve, where these corners right here don't exactly meet the curve, and just round them off a little bit. You can do that across the whole thing if you want. And there we go. I probably should put another little half plank right in here. It is not quite over the base yet. But if I had spaced them out a little bit better, I could have come exactly to the edge, but I didn't this time. But that's okay. Now I am going to put a cut in here, just to let the glue 100% dry before I get my brushes touching this. If you were doing a bunch though, like even if you're just doing 10 in a line, by the time you got done with your 10th, the first one, the glue would be completely dry. So put a cut in here, and we'll come back and do some painting. All right, so we are back, and we're going to apply some paint. I did end up throwing the little half plank on the side here just because it looks better. But now we're going to get into some painting. I'm going to start with Skeleton Horde, and you do not have to use Skeleton Horde. I'm essentially starting with light brown. However you want to apply a light brown to your planks, that's for you to decide. I'm using Skeleton Horde because it happens to be right here. I've used Agrax Earth in the past. I've used Light Tone from, or even whatever the medium tone is called from Army Painter. Is it just called medium tone? I don't know. I've used Army Painter tones, whatever they happen to be called. I will be honest. At one point, I was out of town at a convention, and somehow I ended up not having one of my bases with me somehow. But I had the model, and so I had to remake a base. I think I ended up using a coffee stir stick from like Starbucks or something, and I didn't have the exact colors that were on my army bases, so I just used dirty paint water to to stain the wood. And in a pinch that worked fine. I don't know if I'd recommend it, but like I said, any way to get light brown down on your planks, that's what we want. And we don't even need to wait for this to dry. So the next thing is Dark Oath Flesh, or reddish brown, however you wish to achieve reddish brown. And we're just going to come in and just do a couple of the planks in this color. And you can do like whole planks like I'm doing here, or you could do just like the edges of planks or whatever. And they look very different right now, but once it starts to dry down, you're hardly going to be able to notice a difference, but there will be a difference. And then finally, still while the paint is still a little bit wet here, I'm going to go for Plague Bearer Flesh, or Pukey Green, Brownie Green, however you want to say it. And I'm just going to put this, get the stray bristle out of my brush. I'm just going to focus this on the ridges between, or the gaps between the planks. And it's just to put a little green tinge on them, just because, there's algae. A lot of the times when you see wooden planking, you're in a wet environment. Not always, obviously, but a lot of the time. And so there's algae or other stuff growing, things like that. And so I'll just keep, putting it in the recesses there. One of the things you do want to look out for, I did it sort of instinctually, but if you look at your base like this, sometimes you'll be able to see the side of the wooden plank. It'll be very bright. You just want to make sure, especially in the bigger gaps like this one, you want to make sure to get your brush down in there and make sure that first layer, or one of your layers, really coats the light wood. Like here, for example, right there, you can kind of see it's kind of too light. So you just want to dull that back down. Make sure your paint gets in there. So then you're basically done. You can attach your miniature and call it a day. One of the things you can do if you want to, mix it up, let's grab some tufts. And one of the things you can do, so for instance, like I said, a lot of the time your planking is in a wet environment, but sometimes it's not. Sometimes, it's out in the desert, or out in a cabin or something, and there's no water around, so you might have weeds poking up through it. So what I like to do is I will just cut a bit of a piece off a tuft. This is a gamer's grass tuft. And I just cut a little strip of it off here, just with my hobby knife. And then we'll go for this bigger gap because it makes it easier. You can just plop it right there, and then take your knife and shove it right down into that gap. And sometimes it works really well, and sometimes it tries to fight you. There you go. Stick it right down in there. You can put a little speck of glue if you want on there, but I find it doesn't matter. And then I'll just do the same thing again. Cut a little piece off. Stick it up here, let's say. And just shove it down in the gap. And there'll be the little sticky backing of the sprue. Just make sure you get that stuck down in there, so you're not seeing the white paper basically, on the back. Stuff it down in there, and let's clear that little addition. And there you go. Now you can have a little bit of weeds or grass or whatever growing up through your planks. And then the other thing you can do, which I have done before, is if you want to have, say, your planks are partially buried in the mud or something. I'm just grabbing sterling mud here, but you can use any sort of texture or just dirt from outside or whatever. And you come in, and I usually like to start on an edge for this, and I'll just apply it like that, and then I'll apply it in some patches around. And I find two things very useful in creating a realism for this. One is that you want to start on an edge, like the dirt sort of, goes off into the distance. And two, you want to make sure that the dirt or mud or whatever is thick enough to cover your planking lines. So you don't want, for example, you don't want just mud sitting on this plank, sitting on the plank next to it, but you could be able to see the gap in between. You want to cover that gap like this is, like there's really like a bunch of dirt there, and it's covering up the planks. And the other thing you can do, which is a little more complicated, and so I didn't do it for this tutorial, is you can cut your planks. I'll actually show you. You can cut your planks at an angle. So instead of gluing them onto the base and cutting them, I'm going to cut it at an angle like this. So I'll do that real quick. You kind of just come along sideways and cut it like that. And then you flip it over and you attach it to your base like this. And then you have your planks sort of going off at an angle. And then you can have at ground height or at base height, you can have your mud or whatever. I think this way is easier and looks just as good, or at least close to just as good. So I typically do this way. But if you wanted to, if you wanted to get into it and really go for a realistic looking base and do all that sort of detail, then that might be an approach that you try. But then from here, it's just finishing your dirt how you would in any other situation. So you could dry brush it, add some more tufts to it, do all sorts of stuff. But hopefully that tutorial helped you out. If it did, feel free to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. And hopefully there will be more videos coming very soon. Thanks for watching.